I want to start by making you a little annoyed because I think you've been lied to about saving money. And the lie is so common that nobody even questions it anymore. Save 20% of your paycheck. That's the advice. You've heard it from every finance app, every article, probably your uncle at Thanksgiving. And it sounds responsible. It sounds like something a competent adult would do. Here's the problem nobody mentions. 20% of your income only means something if you've got 20% left over after everything else gets paid. And for a huge number of people, there isn't a leftover. There's rent, then the car, then groceries, then the thing that broke last week. And by the time all of that's done talking, the 20% isn't a plan anymore. It's a joke. So let's just say it plainly. Most savings advice is written by people who have slack in their budget for other people who also have slack in their budget. If that's not you, following it isn't going to fail because you lack discipline. It's going to fail because the advice was never built for your paycheck in the first place. And this isn't some fringe problem, by the way. Depending on which survey you look at, somewhere between a third and nearly half of adults couldn't cover a $400 surprise expense without borrowing or selling something. That's not a small, unlucky minority. That's a huge chunk of working people, many of whom have jobs, pay their bills, and still have nothing behind them if the car makes a bad noise. So here's the actual question I want to answer today. If percentages don't work for tight paychecks, what does? And the answer showed up for me in the strangest possible place, not a finance book, not an economist, a conversation about running. A friend of mine, a guy named Theo, ran his first marathon a few years back, and he told me something that stuck with me way longer than it probably should have. He said the number one thing that destroys new runners isn't a lack of fitness. It's thinking about mile 26 while they're running mile 3. You start doing the math. Okay, I've done 3:23 to go. That's forever. And the distance itself starts to feel unbearable, even though your legs are completely fine. The runners who actually finish, he said, are the ones who trained themselves to stop thinking about the finish line completely and just focus on the mile they're currently in. Not because the finish line doesn't matter, because staring at it while you're barely started will make you quit. That's exactly what happens with savings goals. You need $10,000, you've got 340, and the gap is so wide that your brain treats the whole project as pointless before you've even really tried. This isn't a willpower issue, it's a scale issue. You're staring at mile 26 while you're standing at the starting line. And of course it feels impossible, so the fix isn't try harder. The fix is changing what you're allowed to look at. Here's the actual rule, and it's got 3 parts. I'm going to walk through them a little out of order, because the third one is honestly the most important, and I don't want you to lose focus before we get there. Part 1. Pick a number so small it's almost insulting. Not $500 a month, not 20%. Something closer to $30 or $40, whatever amount barely registers when it leaves your account. This is the only unit your savings account is allowed to think in. You calculate your real target once, say 3 to 6 months of bare survival costs. Divide it by your small number. Write down how many reps that gives you, and then never think about the total again. Just the rep count. That's your mile 3. That's the only mile you're allowed to think about. A guy I know drives for a rideshare app on weekends, take-home pay somewhere, around $2,200 a month. He did this with $35, worked out his survival number, divided it out, got a little over 260 reps, wrote it on a note, and put the note away. Never looked at the big number again. Just the reps. Part 2. Every dollar that shows up out of nowhere gets grabbed immediately. This is where the real progress actually happens, and it's the part most people skip. The scheduled $35 or $40 every payday, that's just a heartbeat. Steady, small, keeps things alive. But it's not what gets you to the finish line at any reasonable speed. What actually moves the number is catching money the moment it shows up unplanned. A refund, a canceled subscription, someone paying you back for something. There's a well-known finding in behavioral economics. You can look up Richard Thaler's work on this, that people mentally treat found money completely differently than regular income. It gets filed under fun money in your head, And fun money evaporates roughly twice as fast as money you actually budgeted for, which means if you don't move it within a day or two, it quietly disappears into small purchases you won't even remember making. So the rule is this: anything unexpected gets converted into your small unit within 24 hours. No exceptions, no, I'll deal with it this weekend. Our rideshare driver canceled a $22 subscription he'd forgotten about and are straight into savings same day. He got a $600 tax refund. That became roughly 17 reps, moved before the money had time to feel like extra. Part 3, and this is the one people get wrong constantly. You're never allowed to go bigger than your unit, even when you really want to. This sounds backwards. If you've got extra cash and you're feeling motivated, why wouldn't you throw in $300 instead of $35? Because that burst of motivation isn't reliable, and building your whole system around an unreliable emotion is how every ambitious savings plan eventually falls apart. The same confidence that convinces you to dump in $300 on a great month is exactly the same confidence that convinces you to quit entirely. 3 months later, when things get tight and you can't keep up the pace you set for yourself, big swings up create big collapses down. Capping every move at your tiny unit keeps the whole system boring, and boring is what survives a bad month, and that's really the whole point of this. On a month where the transmission dies and there's nothing left to give, a percentage-based plan misses its target, and the whole thing feels like a failure, so people stop checking the account out of shame. A small capped system just pauses, nothing broke. The reps you've already logged are still logged. You pick back up whenever you can, same size unit as always. Now, I already know the objection because everybody has it the first time they hear this. $35 is basically nothing. At that pace, this takes years. Both things are true, and neither one actually matters for one specific reason. The fund doesn't need to be finished to start protecting you. Our rideshare driver hit his first full month of survival cash around month 5. Not the finish line. Not even close. Just 1 full month, and that's when the actual anxiety started dropping. Not because he'd solved the problem, but because he had somewhere to land if something went wrong, and having somewhere to land is most of what a savings account is actually for. Compare that to the version of himself that existed 2 years earlier before any of this, because honestly, that's the better comparison. Better than pitting 2 different people against each other. Same guy, same rough income. He tried the aggressive version of saving first, picked $300 a month, an ambitious number, a real commitment, crushed it for 6 weeks. Then a slow month at work happened. He missed the target, and catching up the following month meant putting in $600, which wasn't realistic, so he just stopped quietly. No dramatic decision. The transfer just stopped happening, and the account sat there practically untouched for over a year. Same person. Same paycheck, basically. The only thing that changed between failure and actual progress was the size of the number he let himself work with. If any part of that sounds familiar, if you've got a savings app on your phone right now with a big ambitious number in it and a balance that hasn't moved in months, that's not a discipline problem. That's a scale problem. And it's fixable in about 5 minutes. 2 things before you go do this. If your income genuinely doesn't cover your basic costs, before any saving happens at all. None of this is the fix, and I don't want to pretend otherwise. That's a separate, harder conversation about income, not savings mechanics. No amount of clever budgeting solves a gap that starts before the budgeting even does. And once this account exists, where it physically sits matters more than people think. A decent high-yield savings account is paying something like 4% right now, which means a fund that's actually built up starts generating a handful of extra reps every year completely on its own. That's a deeper topic for another time. But it's worth knowing that money sitting in a regular checking account is quietly losing to inflation while it waits. So here's what I'd actually do tonight. Figure out your real number, the honest one, no padding, and divide it by something almost embarrassingly small. Then set up one automatic transfer before you go to bed, not next week tonight because motivation runs out by Friday, but a transfer that's already scheduled doesn't care how you're feeling. You're not trying to finish the race tonight. You're just trying to get through the mile you're actually in, but